Hi, I'm Megan Amundson, and today we're talking about how to get your nonprofit board to fundraise. As a nonprofit consultant, it's by far the most common question I get, and it's why I created the Fearless Board Fundraising Model and Program. Every nonprofit organization wants their board to fundraise, and for good reason. Nonprofits need the capacity that board members bring. They never have enough staff to do all the fundraising work themselves. And your board runs your network. Your organization needs to build reach into your community for programs, for awareness, for volunteers, and for a larger donor base that brings with it better sustainability and growth. And your board members are great ambassadors. These are people who care deeply about your organization, enough so that they're committing their free time to its great work. And you want people to be introduced to your organization by people who are excited about it. Your board members' excitement builds excitement from others. But the nonprofit structure is not built to set up organizations for automatic success in board fundraising. Your board members are volunteers. They have lives and families and jobs and other things that they spend the majority of their time on. They tune in when they need to do the important work of your organization. But when they're not doing that work, they tune out and they go on and live their lives. This means that there are things you can easily get them to do, and there are things that are just harder to get them to do because as volunteers, they don't have sustained focus on your organization's day-to-day. Fundraising is a profession. It's expertise that needs to be learned and a skill set that needs to be developed. And the vast majority of board members are not fundraising professionals. Yet the expectation still exists that, as a volunteer, they step into a professional role and automatically start doing it because we ask them to over and over again. We wouldn't expect them to come in and rewire our office electrical system without an electrician's license. We certainly wouldn't want them replumbing our bathroom or even leading a lawsuit we're involved in without professional expertise and licensure. Simply telling your board members that a fundraising skill set's not that hard does not get them fundraising. And talking about money is hard. People are uncomfortable doing it, and everyone has baggage related to money. It comes from your culture and community. It's what your parents instilled in you. It's the experiences you yourself had with money. This all shapes how people feel about money, and everyone feels something different. The problem is that we all project our baggage about money onto other people, and that gets in the way of having fundraising conversations. But you can get your board fundraising. You just have to start thinking about it as something they should be doing because they're board members, even if it is part of their job. You don't want to see this expression from your board members when you ask them to do their job, and you certainly don't want them hiding from it. Instead, you need to embrace that you're asking your board members to do a professional job. And in order to get your board who doesn't have professional fundraising experience to fundraise, you need to do three things. You need to shift their mindset and reframe the conversation for them. You need to educate them. You need to train them on how to do the fundraising. And you need to build skill set. From a training, they need to be supported as they go out and build their fundraising skills. This is what the Fearless Board Fundraising Program does. It's a program that's built to educate your board and invest in building your board's skill set in fundraising. You want your board to raise money for your organization, but the first step toward getting your board to fundraise is understanding the need to invest in their professional development so that they can turn around and raise money for you. There's no easy fix to getting your board to fundraise, and investing in them to build professional skill may sound daunting, but when I run the Fearless Board Fundraising Program for my clients, it's amazing just how quickly board members really do develop these skills. The Fearless Board Fundraising Model approaches training your board to fundraise by meeting them where they are. And I built it this way because I've been in your shoes. I was an executive director for small political advocacy organizations. I've been a nonprofit board member. I've even been a major gift officer at a university. I've worn all the hats and I've seen all the challenges. And I'm a realist. I only want to put programs in place that actually get me to the transformation I want to see. I created the Fearless Board Fundraising Model because I benefited from a program just like it when I first became an executive director. The fundraising model itself isn't new. I've just built out the program so you don't have to build it from scratch. And the reason I built it this way is because when I became an executive director for the first time, I became responsible for a major donor fundraising program for the first time. And I had no idea how to grow it. But I noticed a trend in the meeting notes I had from donors who had become major donors just a few years before. About a quarter of my major donors had sat down with a pair of board members about a decade before, when those donors were still giving modest mid-level gifts. That meeting with board members was the beginning of a much deeper relationship with a number of mid-level donors that created the pipeline for a major donor program I was handed as a new executive director. But it didn't just create a major donor pipeline, it created a board pipeline and a volunteer pipeline. Those meetings that board members had with donors who had never received any personalized attention before uncovered donors who cared deeply about our work and built a relationship that brought those donors much closer to the organization. It's what allowed the organization to survive some very challenging times, like the '08 recession. But even though I could see the proof of the success of a program like that, even though I knew firsthand how important that work was for the existence of my organization, as an executive director, I couldn't put a program like that in place. I didn't have the mental space to think through all the steps I would need to put in place for a program like that to work. I didn't have the time to put together all the systems and the structures and the materials board members would need for this to be successful. And I didn't understand the mechanics of major donor fundraising myself well enough to train and support my board to become good fundraisers. That professional major donor skill set didn't come from me for a few more years. But once it did, I knew this kind of program is just the kind of program that transforms boards from anxious volunteers to skilled fundraisers. So when I became a consultant, I started working with nonprofit boards, and I developed a great training that helped board members really get comfortable with how to have a donor conversation. In fact, I regularly heard that board members telling me it was fun to have donor conversations after my training. But it became really clear that as much as we wanted a training to lead to board members fundraising, no board ever started fundraising because they attended a training, no matter how much fun I made learning how to have that donor conversation. Once board members walked away from that training, unless they were required to practice the skills I had just taught them, within a few weeks, they'd forget all the warm feelings they had about having donor conversations, and they'd go back to being anxious about it. It's why the Fearless Board Fundraising Program isn't a series of quick fixes or one-off trainings you provide to your board. It's a program. And the pieces of the program all exist to help ease your board members into fundraising while addressing their deep, dark, fundamental anxieties. As I work with clients implementing the Fearless Board Fundraising Program, it's become really clear that as volunteers, board members need continual support, structure, accountability, and reminders of how fun this conversation is. Like with everything else that causes us anxiety, we need to be reminded the things that we think are scary are often just scary in our head. It's why the Fearless Board Fundraising Program focuses so heavily on how you build ongoing support for your board members to consistently do this work. Because we both want them to succeed. Because if you build into a board fundraising program trainings, skills practice in a safe space, systems that board members just plug right into to fundraise for your organization, a program that requires ongoing and systematic action on the part of your board members, a culture of accountability to follow through on tasks, and ongoing support for when they need to be reminded that fundraising isn't scary for when they hit a challenge, then you will build a culture of philanthropy within your board. It's that culture of philanthropy that your board members hold each other accountable for that transforms the board into a fundraising board. And once you've built fundraising skill amongst your board members, then there are a lot of fundraising tasks you can ask of them. The Fearless Board Fundraising Program is a specific model of how to ease your board members into building fundraising skill. It's the training wheels to get them comfortable with having that donor conversation and on track to building actual fundraising skill. And one day, you get to take those training wheels off. Once your board members have learned how to effectively fundraise and how to do it in a way that's authentic to them and doesn't cause them stress or anxiety, that even those big fundraising asks you've been making of them up to this point, the ones that they've been resisting doing, they suddenly don't seem so daunting because they've learned how to approach fundraising in a way that feels good for them. The transformations I've seen in how board members view fundraising when I work with nonprofit clients to implement the Fearless Board Fundraising Program have been truly exciting. And the transformation begins in just a few months. Stay tuned for my next video talking in more detail about what that transformation looks like. I'd love your comments and questions. Post them below, and stay tuned for more.